Hey, Eric, so talk to us. What's one piece of advice you can give us this morning?
What I like to talk about is the concept of emotional specificity. And emotional specificity says that every emotion has a singular purpose. I believe in our culture, because we look at the world hierarchically, in other words, I talk about it from the big circle to the little circle. We see ourselves at different levels of power. We're often trying to fight for power, or other people give us power. People want to take it away. So we're always scrambling. And the underlying emotion of that model of power is fear. What I teach about is equity. Equity comes from a place of balance, and it's not about equality, because equality says we're all the same. Equity is about balance. We all have different gifts, strengths, weaknesses, handicaps, wisdom, experience, knowledge, and understanding. And what I talk about there, some people are gifted dentists. Some people are gifted psychologists. Some people are gifted at law and things. So we all have our gifts. I want to encourage people to find their strengths and gifts and express those. And that's the same way I look at emotion. If we look at emotion hierarchically, we often see emotions as good or bad, right or wrong, strong or weak, and helping us to win or lose. And those are the four dichotomies I say that operate under a hierarchy. If we look at emotions from an equity standpoint, emotions are there to teach us things, tell us things, do things for us, help us do things for ourselves, and or show us things. So when we understand that singular purpose for each emotion and why they're there, then we can sort through life a lot easier. I know life in dentistry, I was speaking before the show that I wanted to be an orthodontist for years. That was my dream. And as I got into college and I tried to pursue that and the grades weren't where they needed to be, life took me where I needed to go. And that's kind of how I looked at it too, that, life has its flow to it. And when things get tough, usually it's because something we feel inside or experiencing inside might want to look at considering change to. So as we look at those things, what are the things that we can change in life? And emotions are those signals to us to let us know that something might need change, especially the emotions that we might call bad or wrong or weak, yet serve a very positive purpose. What am I talking about? Let's look at failure. Many people feel failure about things when they feel like they didn't reach a level of performance that they wanted to. They didn't make as much money as they wanted to. They might not be having as good a marriage as they wanted to. They might be having struggles with their kids. They might be having all these problems they feel are piling up on them that say, I failed, I failed, I failed. All failure wants to tell us is that it's time to learn. That's it.
Mhm.
Now, what surrounds failure? Guilt says I've done something to somebody else I need to fix. Shame says I've done something myself I need to fix. Now, what is the core issue of guilt and shame? Guilt says I've done something that maybe I wasn't loving or showing love towards somebody else. And shame says I'm not loving myself. So when we continue to put ourselves through these situations again and again and again, that expose us to feelings of shame and or guilt and or failure, failure saying it's time to learn something new, time to look at something differently. And let's extend beyond that. Most people hate to feel stupid. Well, what's stupid about? From the standpoint of emotional algebra, which is what I talk about in my podcast is Emotional Algebra with Dr. E, I say that stupid is failure times X. So stupid is a function of failure. And when we see that we felt multiple failures, stupid is just saying, step back and look at all the things that you can learn from and grow from so that you can make differences in your life. And the issue is if we want to bury those things, deny those issues, not ignore them, we know physics tells us that we can't destroy energy, we only change its form. So things in our life we'd rather throw out or bury or run from or avoid, they're in there. And to me, it's fragmented energy. It's stuck energy that is important for us to see the value of finding and learning to understand and embrace in that process.
Interesting, Eric. Interesting. I love that all failure wants to tell us that it's time to learn. So then, can you break down emotional specificity in the context of running a dental practice? Like, how can practice owners use this concept to manage their team, patients, and personal stress more effectively?
Absolutely. So if we look at that idea of one of the things that's common in running your own business is that emotion of overwhelmed. When we feel overwhelmed, what is it trying to tell us? In a hierarchical world, overwhelmed is seen as bad and wrong and weak. And if we feel overwhelmed for an extended period of time, then we're often going to feel like we're losers or we're losing this battle because we see life as a battle. And overwhelmed either wants to hunker down and hide or run like heck and avoid. So that's where we want to see that we have three core emotions that I say exist in this universe: love, fear, and pain. All right. Fear is often, it's an emotion that's pre-protective. It's saying there might be something you need to do to protect yourself. Overwhelmed is a pain-based emotion because there's the visceral feeling to overwhelm. It feels heavy. It feels burdensome. It can give us headaches. It can keep us up at night because it's feeling all these different feelings, emotions, beliefs, attitudes, memories, histories are all piling up on us. And often that's why it just wants to curl in. If we listen to overwhelmed, it's saying step back and let's turn around and look at all these issues singularly. Let's look at the issues we might be feeling in our marriage and write those things down. What do I feel like I want to fulfill in my marriage, or where do I feel like I'm falling short? What is failure trying to tell me to learn from in my marriage? What am I learning from how my practice is running? Is it turning a profit? Am I having to deal with insurance company issues? Am I seeing changes on the horizon, anticipating a future that hasn't happened yet? So do I need to plan for a future of change? Am I blowing something up because fears of things happening in the past are now affecting my perceptions of the future? Are there things changing within my clientele? Do I have to look at a location change? What's changing in government regulations, insurance regulations? Break all those things down individually and then take notes on them. Because you eat an elephant one bite at a time, not the whole elephant at once. When we start to listen to overwhelmed, then we can start to understand, oh, I can do this. For example, I was just skiing last week and I was not sleeping well because sometimes when I get vacation, for me, it's the time that my mind goes, I've got this to do and this to do and this to do and this to do. So I wasn't sleeping well. And then when I wasn't sleeping, I said, okay, my mind wants me to sort things out. So rather than getting really upset that I wasn't sleeping, I started looking at the issues that were affecting my feelings of overwhelmed. And as I looked at it and said, I can bite that when I get home. 2 days later, I'm going to do this. And I have this podcast to do with you today. And I knew I was going to be able to get that done. So I realized it wasn't as much as I was feeling. And like I said, fear of that pain of failure and feeling like I might miss something and then screw things up because of my own history stuff that feeds into it. My temperament helped me to step back. So when I got home, I just hit the ground running. I got up at 6:30 the next day. I started editing one of my podcasts that came out this week. And then I got some other things done, made some phone calls, all those things that I really needed to write down. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people, even your clientele, are going to be feeling overwhelmed about things, whether it's a root canal or an implant. And they're looking at, wow, that's going to potentially feel painful. That payment I got to make is going to feel painful. In serving people, many people who serve people to help them make their lives better often carry this guilt with them that, oh my gosh, I have to charge them this. And I know they're having a tough time. And I just had an episode with a guy called John Patterson who runs Influential You, which is for a lot of executives. It might be something some of your listeners want to look into, but he talks a lot about us making sure we value ourselves and that we value our time. We value our boundaries. We value our worth. Because even when you don't value yourself, how's that going to affect your stress? How's that going to affect your interactions with your clients, with your patients, with your staff? Are you seeing yourself in the full level of power that you have to affect your life and the lives of those around you positively?
Interesting. Okay. So then is that how it works, Erik, where overwhelm can turn into anxiety? Or where does that come from?
Perfect question. So I look at the core emotions to many diagnoses. And to me, the core emotion of anxiety is helplessness. The core emotion to depression is hopelessness. So what does helplessness want? It's pretty easy. It says, I need help. Whether I need to help myself, or I need to ask for help from other people, or I need to look for, help from the forces around me. Just give me a break kind of thing. Sometimes it feels like in life. The more we feel helpless, the more likely we are to feel hopelessness. And that's where you get to that idea of learned helplessness. So hopelessness, as I see it, is this emotion that sits at the bottom of this chasm. And it's this big dark hole. And in front of us is this ladder that's labeled with hope. That hope is there saying, go ahead and climb that ladder, climb that ladder. And way at the top sometimes feel like this pinhole of light that we're climbing towards. Well, sometimes we feel set up by hope, Because as we climb that ladder, we hit a greased rung and we slide back down. And the more we slide back down and hit and land on our rear end on that ladder, it says, I'm not even going to bother anymore. And then we're there with hopelessness is despair and failure and shame and guilt and stupid and betrayed sometimes and inadequate. So again, see the difference between all of these feelings and acknowledge them, because often overwhelm is not just about the things in our life. It's about the way that we've combined so many of our emotions together and we haven't teased them out or seen the unique property or specificity of each emotion, what it's trying to teach us, tell us, show us, do for us, or help us do for ourselves.
I guess sometimes it can be a little bit difficult in the sense of, so for example, a lot of practice owners often experience a mix of frustration, fear, and excitement when making major business decisions. So then how can they decode these emotional layers to make better choices?
Great insight. Years ago, I had somebody in my office who had really a lot of trauma and they had always felt this underlying anxiety. And they said, I wish I could tell the difference between my anxiety and my excitement. And we talked about that. And I helped them to see that anxiety isn't just anxiety, it's all these other emotions. And excitement, though, results in an increase in excitatory neurotransmitters, can go, hey, and it can feel the same way as, hey, when somebody's feeling afraid. So when we understand that neurochemical interaction and intersection, that basically helps us physically almost register emotions. And we understand how our history has taught us that sometimes we're not going to interpret those correctly. We want to step back and really look at, do I feel excited about change? And do I also feel fear of the possibilities of what could happen with this change? Both are going to occur. And even then, when we get to that level of helplessness, and anxiety isn't only helplessness, that's the core emotion. There are many emotions around that. That's then I want people to look back and ask, okay, what is the probability of success? So look at it logically, look at it pragmatically. What's the probability of success? What are my approaches to risk? Am I risk avoidant, risk averse? Or am I excited about change and willing to take risks? So if I know my own predispositions and I recognize that I might feel excited and this might have a 90% chance of success while I'm risk averse and any chance of failure, which then goes back to the emotion, and any chance of then feeling stupid, again, another emotion, is going to feed this. And then my history and my fears of feeling these emotions go into that. Now I can start to separate this and really increase my chances for success by my investment in it, as well as if somebody feels like they need to have a back door or they need to have a place where they say, okay, I'm going to invest in this up to this amount of money. After this, I'm out, and that's okay. And then you evaluate, what did I learn from this? How can I grow from this? So I think we have to look at setting up parameters for those situations that help mitigate risk and moderate emotion and increase the support system we have around this when moving forward. For example, if I'm making a significant investment in my practice, like in promoting my podcast, I've set a limit that, okay, I'm going to spend $1,000 a month on promoting my podcast. And in that, what did I do? Well, I considered, is my wife comfortable with that amount? Yeah, she's comfortable with that now. She knows you need to spend money to make money, so she's into that. And do I have the support system in place? I have to look at the marketing company I'm hiring and the videos that I'm producing. And am I really invested in doing my podcast to a professional enough level that it's going to succeed? These are all factors that I looked at when setting in, and I've been sticking to my budget. And I've been putting out some good content. I've found people through trial and error that I think are doing a better job with execution of some of those pieces. So that's the way that I look at it, is failing to plan is planning to fail. Sometimes when we're busy, we might dive into things without really taking the time to plan. And you want to understand that about even the people that are coming to see you might not have planned to come in and hear that they need an implant or they need a bridge and they need time to adjust. And sometimes in our fury of wanting to get things done and keep things on a schedule so we can either fit them in where we need to, or where we want to keep them coming so we can get this process done, because we know if people don't come back, the likelihood of them following through on that procedure decreases. Well, sometimes it's important to let people know that are coming to you to say, take the time you need to think about it. If you have questions, call my office. If you have the time to make the time to talk them through, know that they might be feeling fear, know that they might have trust issues, know that they might have their own, am I worth it? to get this investment in my mouth, or should I just let my teeth rot? Literally, I've had some of those discussions with people when they fear going to the dentist. These are all issues to consider, not only for yourself, but for the people who are coming to you who might need your help.
Interesting. So then what role do emotions play? Because we talked about planning, right? So when it comes to treatment plan acceptance, we create a treatment plan and we're like, hey, here you go, patient. And we want them to accept it because obviously it's going to increase case acceptance rates, more production, more more money, more profits. So what role do emotions play in treatment plan acceptance, and how can understanding emotional specificity increase case acceptance rates? So what you're telling me right now, how can we utilize this with that?
Emotions, to me, are the key factor. People want to think that they can live their life logically. No, we don't. Emotions are they're just part of our existence, and they can wind their way into our logic. And I wrote a poem, actually I had posted it on the podcast, but it's called Logic Felt Within. It was about this relationship between logic and emotions. And logic wanted to think that it didn't need the emotions. The emotions actually in the poem started to see what logic was doing and learn from logic how to manipulate logic. So it's kind of a play on that whole situation. Treatment acceptance comes down to trust, not only trust in you and the job you're doing, but trust in themselves. And again, how do they see their life? If they feel like life has been one screw up after another, why and how are you going to make a difference? That then is confidence. So if they don't necessarily feel confident in your skill set or even the industry skill set, I think a lot of times people, and I work in a field that a lot of people have hit and miss experiences with. So I'm usually seeing that people have been to 2 or 3 or 4 other psychologists. And so their trust in the whole field has been questioned. Their faith, which to me, faith I define as the span between fear and truth. It's like a ray of light, but we only see light when it shines on us. We don't see that span between light. It's a wave and it's a particle. But that's the thing to understand is you want to help to build between you and your patients and your clients and your staff. You want to build a sense of trust. So truth, honor, and integrity are 3 things I talk about with building trust. You want to build confidence in that you know what you're doing, you execute on what you're doing, your staff executes on what they're doing, and you want to continue to show them that, yes, you have a plan, because like I said, failing to plan is planning to fail. And if people don't see that you have a specific plan, and that in many places for logic, you want it to be based in science, not hunches. Well, I think if I do this, this should be better. You want to be able to go back to say, if you'd like to review this article or how this is done, check out this article, look at this video, have those resources that even your staff. And with AI, you can so quickly go to one of the AI programs and say, look me up resources on implants, new things in implants, or why implants fail. Because you want your clients to also see, well, if there's this fear of failure and they have trust issues, say, these are the situations why implants don't work. This is why my implant is going to work. This is why my bridge is going to work, because these are all the factors that I look at. That's going to then decrease doubt. Okay, doubt lets us know when we have more questions. Confusion lets me know when I need more information. So it's not just about building confidence, because you can build confidence and confusion and doubt can still be increasing with it. You want to increase confidence while decreasing doubt, answering more questions, giving the information and access to information, building a sense of faith and trust in your sense of the way that you treat people. And that's where making sure your people feel heard, understood, accepted, even liked and loved by you as a person. I think that's critical, because to me, a lot of it's about customer service. It's about, do people see you treating them like they matter? Because if they feel like they're another number and you just want to get in and get out, and I've had the same dentist for 30 years in my town. I love the guy and we have great chats. And I find the people they bring in, they're the same way because they want to have that communication, that connection. I think that sense of community is important in that. So I hope that gives a pretty solid answer.
Yeah, no, definitely. So then when it comes to that, because I love that, the truth, honor, and integrity, it builds trust. You want to spend time with the new patient, especially when you're presenting this treatment. What is behind the saying, hey, I just don't have the money, or I need time to think about it, or let me go see if I can find a cheaper option? Is that really just, hey, they really don't have the money? Or is it more they're afraid to spend and then there goes fear? What's really behind that?
You really want to look at it individually. Some people may not have the money. Some people may recognize they're overspending. Some people may feel fear. Some people might just not want to go through the pain. So again, the fear of the pain of the procedure, the fear of it not working, the fear of costing others. So if they're a parent and they have kids and they want their kids to have all these opportunities, and maybe they're going to pay for their kids' sport over getting a dental procedure done. And so we got to look at what's their level of sacrifice. So sometimes what you want to be able to do is say, I don't want to elicit fear from you. I want to give you the logic or the reasoning why this is important to get done. What could happen? I don't say what will happen. Whenever I work with people, I think when you say, this is what's going to happen, you don't know that. And then that can sound kind of pushy, salesy, manipulative. But you said, I want you to be aware of the potential risks. And this could work out fine. If you do this and this and this might work out fine. The chances of that, the probability of that is about 10%. All right. This is what might happen if you don't do anything. You can continue to erode the bone. As you erode the bone, then it's going to affect the stability of other teeth. So the things in there, this is the investment that you will make now. And this is why it's worth it. This is the investment you may have to make down the line. Now, let's say you want to find a cheaper option. Pursue cheaper options by all means. If you can save money, I want you to work with me because I know you. I have history with you. I hope we've built a good working relationship. I want the best for you. If you go to somebody for a one-off procedure, they don't know you. They don't have a relationship. They might not be as invested in your outcome because, I'm going to be here. I'm going to follow this through. And these are choices I know that you want to make for you, and I respect that. But just know that these are the issues that I want you to consider in this process of making a decision, because I know it can feel scary. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel like a burden that maybe you feel that you just don't want to handle right now. So just know that I've got your back in whatever way I can.
Yeah.
And then release it.
I like that. I mean, you emphasize that all emotions stem from love, fear, and pain. So it sounds like you really need to make that shine, the love part, especially when you're building this type of trust. So I guess, how can a practice owner use love, not just for patients, but for their business and their team as a guiding force in decision-making?
I did an episode on the podcast called The Specificity of Love, and it went into all the different types of love. In Sanskrit, there are 96 different words for different types of love.
Wow.
Okay. In that, what I opened up with was in Inuit cultures, there are 30 or 40 different words for different types of snow. So to me, the reason I said that is the importance of a concept to a culture. Usually the more words they have to describe its specificity. We use love to describe, I love an ice cream cone. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my job. I love my patients. Those are all different types of love. Latin had 7 different words. Greek had agape, eros, and philos. So I explained those just to explain that idea of unique specificities. But I think the thing we have to look at is that it's okay to really love the people that we work with, to love them in that agape way. That's where agape, and then philos is a brotherly type of love. We have so many arbitrary boundaries that we set up in our culture, of where professionalism lies. And I think a lot of that comes from fear. A lot of that comes from our lack of understanding of the depth of many of these different concepts. Even love-based emotions like pride, respect, trust, security, safety, comfort. Those are all, to me, love-based emotions. And then, like I said, our infatuation, our admiration, our liking somebody. Happiness is a love-based emotion. So as we look at all these emotions and their specific, unique qualities, and we realize, it is okay to love these people I work with because I am connected to them. I am interested in their outcomes. And at that level, whether you want to see it as relational, spiritual, religious, functional, it's okay. It's all to be able to look at it through our lens of how we see the world and really find and ask ourselves, how do I love myself? Let me count the ways. So we can turn that back on ourselves. And if we have a hard time loving ourselves, A, it's going to be a hard time for other people to love us. And B, it's going to be hard for us to really know how to love other people.
Gotcha.
And that's where often work comes into play with that, doing our own therapy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. Philos, Philadelphia. City of brotherly love. So then emotional specific, especially with this, what we're talking about with team dynamics, because this is huge. How can this help practice owners create a culture that reduces staff turnover and burnout? So if you could, let's just put an example right now. We're getting a lot of staff turnover, quite a bit. And this is just in reality. There's a lot. I don't know if you know that, but there's a lot of staff turnover, right? And people are talking about burnout. What steps can we start implementing right now to start reducing this?
I think look at the difference between, first build a good team culture. I think as we build a team culture and things feel more like a community, I used to do community workshops in Haiti, and I teach all about community building. And I'd say, if you don't have trust, you don't have a community. You just have a bunch of people living around each other. You don't have a family. You just have people living under the same roof. You don't have a business. You just have a bunch of people working who are getting paid.
Yeah.
So you want to build a sense of community, because with community comes love, comes more trust, comes a sense of loyalty, comes a sense of, if I'm having a struggle here, I can lean on that, because we also want to look at the difference between eustress and distress. Eustress is a good stress. Eustress is, I can't wait to go out there and tackle that. It's a lot to do and I can do it. We have to look at distress and goes, oh my God, not this again. So what are the factors affecting the idea of distress? And are we talking about it in our team meetings? Are we really able to look at what all the factors are? Does one of your hygienists have an issue with their kid that they're having a hard time taking care of? Or are they having an issue with some relationship issue or other financial issues that may be affecting them? And it's not your job to fix them, but it's in a place where if you know that it's happening, you can let them know that they're in their corner, that you're willing to help them find resources to help them through that, or other people can help them find resources. You're going to build that sense of cohesiveness. And to me, why we don't have a lot of cohesiveness across many, many jobs is because there's no sense of loyalty, because there's no sense of trust, because many people feel treated like objects rather than people. So if you as the practice owner are busy and driving the dollar, you're not necessarily supporting the relationships. And those relationships are critical to your income, because how long does it take to onboard somebody new to your policies and procedures, to the way you want them to do things? And are you working with them? Not are they working for you? That's hierarchical. Are you working with them, and are they working with you? That's equity. So look at that subtle mind shift between power over versus power with, because the people that work with you, or if you choose to see for you, you've indentured them in some way if they're working for you. You've empowered them if they're working with you. So that's the different ways of approaching things. And I think some people have these superiority complex. I am the doctor. I am in charge. You will do what I say. And if you don't, you're going to pay the price. That only treats people like children. And professionals who have gone to school and are adults and have their own lives and their own issues don't usually want to be treated like children. So that's the thing that we want to think about in that is, how are we treating our people? And how, again, can I look at my own issues of status and power and maybe my arrogance, which is a protective shield of false pride? And how can I then change that more to a sense of confidence or comfort so that I can promote this environment that I want to see everyone succeed?
Interesting. Gotcha. Awesome, Erik. I appreciate it. One of the last questions I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned emotion weaves into logic, right? So whenever we say, hey, you got to think logically, we're never really 100% think. Can we ever think a lot? Like, for example, it's like, hey, you're too emotional in that decision. You got to take it out. Take out your emotions in that decision. Can we do that? And if we can't, how can we turn down the volume on the emotions and turn up the logic?
And again, you're right with me, because when I talk about quantum physics and each emotion being a different frequency, I talk about the amplitude of frequencies, and I talk about emotional resonance. And when things happen outside of us that ping a certain emotion, it's going to ping that frequency. Well, what's going to happen to everything else that resonates with that frequency? It's going to increase the amplitude of those other objects that resonate with that frequency. So if all we're trying to do is tell that person, basically stop feeling, chill out, relax, we're telling them to stuff that emotion, feeling, belief. And that's then where it's going to really weave its way in, because now logic is only responding through our defenses and through the lens that we're going to see things through, that's going to be affected by past experience, past beliefs. And then what's it going to ping if that person has always been told, you're too emotional, you need to chill out. That's going to ping all this person's history of stuff, which is probably going to ping failure, shame, embarrassment, guilt, unworthy. Then protective emotions like anger, rage, arrogance, flippancy, defiance, sarcasm, and hatred. Those are the 7 primary protective emotions I talk about. You're not really going to get a fair, balanced response, because emotion is a part of the response. Emotion is part of their history. So as we look at these factors here and we realize, okay, that's not really fair to tell them just to be logical. That's the time to say, I acknowledge your fears and that's okay. Or I acknowledge these emotions are here. What also can we help you to see what other factors are affecting this? That's then when you're going back to looking at overwhelmed. And you're taking overwhelmed with logic and say, let logic and overwhelm hold hands. And let's look at all these pieces.
Mhm.
And that's often the way I have people envision it is all these different emotions, beliefs, attitudes are like people living in our head. And if we acknowledge them and we start to respect them, because I had a talk with somebody years ago about this authoritarian inside of them that was trying to run the show. And that for a long time, they're like, I need him. He gets things done. And I'm like, look at all the problems he's causing and contributing to because he's denying this emotion and this belief and this attitude. And now they're coming up and they're affecting your anxiety because they want your attention. They just need to be quiet and let me get this done. And after a couple years, 3 years of work, 3 years, the guy finally said, yeah, I really see that this is destructive, but I don't have time to deal with this now because I have this and this and this. And they said, there's always going to be this and this and this. So he had to have that logical discussion from that standpoint of this logical part of him that was trying to control everything, that the more that he controlled everything, I said, look at over the years how you've handled things with more equity. How has your life gone? Oh, it's been better. Look at how you've looked at this emotion and this emotion and this emotion. How's that managed the big swings you used to have? They're not as much. How much medicine are you taking these days? Less. How are you doing in this and this and this? Oh, it is working out. So what I needed to do was help look at these logical ways that him assessing and addressing his emotions from a more equitable approach has really led to this outcome. But that fear, that authoritarian part of him that's running the show, to let go, have faith, span between fear and truth. So I said, even that authoritarian feels terrified to let go. And he went, you're right, but I don't want to look at that right now. So it's that quick that we have these things happen within our heads.
Interesting. So then the last question, what practical exercises or routines can leaders or practice owners use to develop emotional awareness and apply it to business decisions? If you were to listen to this episode and whatever Erik tells me right now, I apply it. Will it move the needle for growth in a week, in a month, in a year? And that's what we want to see. So what practical exercises or routines can we do today that's like a small win?
I think to be able to step back and look at what your expectations are. I wrote an article years ago. It was called Reach for the Stars and Land on Uranus. But it was about the difference between hopes, dreams, goals, and expectations. And in that, it was to really have people step back and evaluate and look at the difference between hopes, dreams, goals, and expectations. If our expectations are perfection and our goals are perfection, I would say perfection is the dream to be aspired to, not realized, as has been realized time and again. So when we look at that and we look at our expectations and our goals and then our beliefs that drive that, and then we can look at do a risk reward assessment of that. Write these things down as you're looking at it. Now, look at the emotions. So you might have a number of different columns as you're writing it down. What are my expectations, beliefs, goals? What are the probabilities that I see of success/failure? And then what do I learn from the failure? And what are the emotions and historical situations that affect my decision-making process? And then consult resources. Look at your resources that you have. Let helplessness, if somebody's feeling anxious, do its job and say, hey, let me talk to somebody else in my field who's done the same thing. Let me talk to my accountant to see how this might work out. Let me talk to a therapist to let me see if I should make this change. There's a lot of times that, I've had people over the years talk to me about what's going on in their business. And I said, I'm not here to give you business advice. We'll help you look at the risks and the probabilities and possibilities and why you're in this situation and where this other person might be coming from to make these decisions. So again, we want to look at all these different issues to let overwhelm even do its job and break down the complex into the simple pieces to start to make sense.
So do you recommend we write it down? Like, hey, I'm feeling a ton of a mix of emotions. Actually find the time and then sit down and say, for example, and maybe this has happened to you a lot of times. It happens to me all the time where we can't sleep, right? It's like a hamster wheel, right? We're thinking of a lot of things and some things we're thinking of and it's like, what the? I don't even know what I'm thinking of, like my coffee in the morning, right? Or something, but you're thinking of it. And now, do you recommend we sit down and write down everything we're thinking of or everything in that moment, or we just try to sleep?
I used to do that. I'd get up and write it down because it gets it out. It purges it. Worry often is that emotion that says, I got things I got to do because if I don't do them, bad things can happen. That's the purpose of worry. Worry often wants action. What we do is we think if we're spinning our wheels and thinking about it, we're doing something. No, we're not. writing it down gets it out, it purges it, it puts it in a place where I can see it, and then I can sort it because I can see it. Then I can create action items based on those things. Some of those things I might realize are past issues that, I don't necessarily need to carry this with me. Some of them things are saying, oh no, I really want to look at this piece, so I want to pragmatically take steps on this. And on this thing that I'm worrying about in the past, I need to find time to look at that part in that belief system to let that part know that, hey, I got you. I'm going to help you out. So it might help us to see, we can work on this in therapy. We can work on this piece in business. We can work on this piece in our marriage. We can work on this piece with our kids. So when we separate that and we start to, like I said, look at the elephant one bite at a time, that's then where we can start to make more sense of things rather than just be stuck in this flurry of emotions that want to be heard. They want to feel understanding. They want to feel accepted. So remember, your emotions are there to help you, not to hurt you. It's just life has taught us in this world we live in that they're bad and wrong and weak. And no, they're not. They're there to help us find our way through this world. And I say this world is emotion school. That's what we're here for, is emotion school.
Interesting. Awesome, Erik. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is drepresents.com. I do my podcast, Emotional Algebra with Dr. E. Can be found on YouTube, Spotify. You can watch or listen on there, and you can listen on Apple and Amazon. And that's a weekly podcast. I also am ramping up to start more consistently pumping out my Your Empower Minutes, or just like quick 1 to 2 to 3 minute videos that are often cuts from my podcast, as well as separate little biteable pieces of metaphors for life and things to look at.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. So that's going to be in the show notes below. So definitely check that out. And Erik, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.